All right. What is up, everybody? We are back for our reviewing users builds live show here. We have two names on the list to get started with. If anybody tuning in wants to get their build reviewed live on stream, they like the content that we're bringing, they like the personalized advice, drop your username in the office hours channel in Discord and I will add you to the queue. But we are going to jump right in here and get our first person up on the board. So let's get them up here and let's start reviewing some builds. So it should be a fun day. Give me a second to get them up on the board, but after that, we would get rocking and rolling. All right. So we're going to go back to yesterday's MLB slate. And it looks like they played a number of slates here. You know, probably like there were 3 slates yesterday. There was a DK early slate. There was a turbo slate and then a 5-game main. We're going to do the early slate because it had the most games on the slate. And it looks like this person had the most entries in that slate as well. So let's do this DK main slate from yesterday. So let's start, as always, in the contest tab, seeing what their decisions were here. So their MME selections look good. Starting from the ground up, you know, quarter jukebox, $1.20, playing a mini max, throwing one lineup in the flagship. I think that's fine. I would like to see a little bit more single entry and 3 max here. You know, if we're like calculating dollars, right? Like we have $9 out of 124 going into like the single entry / 3 max, because even this one entry in the $15, you know, this is still 150 max contest. So I would be counting it toward that allocation, right? If you're doing this, you're like, hey, I want to put one lineup in the flagship as like my like gamble wild card, you know, count that towards your 20 max and 150 max and don't count it towards your single entry. So that's the only thing I would say here is, you know, mix in some single entry and 3 max a little bit more. And if you need to take that from anywhere, probably take it from the mini max, you know, play 100 lineups in the mini max, do something different, right? So that's what I would recommend. And AFG's here said, or AF Gator, maybe. You can let me know if I'm right or wrong. I just randomly tried 150 max. I don't normally do that. More 20 entry and 3 entry max contest. It's totally fine to play the 150 maxes. You know what I mean? But I think one thing to remember is like, you don't have to max them out. You know, we talk about this as like, you put your best lineup in first, and then you put your second best, your third best, your fourth best. So if you only put 100 lineups, well, you're putting your top 100 and you're leaving out your 101 through 150 of the best lineups, right? That's okay. So if you need to enter less to balance out your portfolio, do that. But nothing egregious here. Everything looks okay. Just some small advice. Okay. So let's see how you grade it out in the 150 max. Start there. So as far as the sim ROI goes here, -3%. So some room for improvement here. Let's talk about what we can do to improve this, right? Average salary, pretty high. Playing mostly unique lineups. Average dupes is still 0. You know, there is a little bit of randomness there as opposed to like, as to coming in unique, like sometimes that's just going to happen for a small amount of your portfolio. Let's filter by 150 maxers here, actually. And, you know, you're even seeing this with the highest sim ROI portfolios, right? Just randomly, some lineups get duped here. Some people more than others, but usually average dupes is still 0. So this is like the big thing here. Make sure you're like, you know, not playing a bunch of cash lineups that are getting heavily duped, which doesn't seem to be the case. So So there's just some interesting things up here at the top, right? You know, we say average projection matters. We say sim average score matters, right? And then you see Mythical Rhymer here, 103.3. And then you see the next highest, 109.7, and then 106, and then 106. So it's like, you know, I always find this super interesting, right? I would probably take some time and look at both of these portfolios, say, okay, how is Mythical Rhymer getting to a high sim ROI with 103 average score? And then how is, I don't know, McDonacher getting to a high sim ROI with a high projection, right? These are two different ways of doing it. You know, this second set actually had like a lot of dupes in it. So pretty interesting here, but just shows you that, you know, there's more than one path. So, I mean, filter for your lineups, playing at least a 4 stack in every lineup. Correlation looks fine. Huh, what happened here? Let's try reloading this contest. I think something went a little bit funky. So for some reason, it's not showing me your lineups, which is super weird. Let's see if we can see somebody else's lineups. Showing me stack types. I see team stacks for another person. Okay, so let's try you again. Plus icon. That's so strange. So for some reason, I don't know why. The builder's not loading the players in your lineups. So it's not going to give us a ton of info about like the team stacks or the players you played or things like that, which is kind of unfortunate. So let's jump into a build here and maybe we can get the same information from a build. And glad to see that, you know, you're keeping up and implementing some of the things we're talking about, right? I think these aggregate metrics, I think they are helpful. I think they're actually really helpful at the end of the day. So let's start with this initial build you ran. And let's just look at some of the things you did. So I want to see what kind of settings you have. Okay, default settings. Any rules? Okay. So I don't know if these are old or new or what, but let me just take a peek at some of these rules. Okay, just a 4 stack rule, 5 stack rule. So I think it's fine to have these rules. I would say just make one change here, which is when you do the stacking rule, use an advanced stack, and I'll just do a new one. Do stack advanced, and then you can put, you know, 4 or 5 in this bottom column here, which is all the positions, but just set pitchers greater than or equal to 0. That way you can use a pitcher in a stack. So just make this small change when you're using your stacking rules. It's always a little bit better. Okay, so these are all really old rules, never use them, but that's just a good general note for like anybody doing stacking rules is to do that. I'll forget all these ones. These look very, very specific. Okay, seeing like a contest sim for every contest you play. I think that's good. See what this filters for. Okay, ROI greater than 0. I think that's perfect. I don't know if you did do this or not, but I would highly recommend using mini neeks here just to get some diversification in your lineups if you're not using it. Your lineups look pretty diverse already. You know, we're seeing like no more than 25% exposure to any one batter. You have exposure to some pitchers here, but it all looks like pretty flat. Some small manual tweaks, I think that's okay, right? Okay. So I would say you have more than like a few small manual tweaks here. We see a lot of like minimax exposures as we scroll down here. You know, that's kind of what Minineeks does, right? It's a very organic exposure adjustment tool. It's going to make a lot of the changes that you want to make in a more natural way. And I would try increasing this first and, using it in combination with the aggregate metrics and then see how close you get to what you want. And normally what happens is you end up going from, 15 to 20 exposure changes down to like 3 to 5. And that ends up being better. That ends up leading to just like overall better lineups getting in your set. Because one thing the builder does is it heavily prioritizes your minimax exposures. And, you could lose some diversification by doing that. But when you do it the opposite, when you use the mini uniques first, it's trying to get diversification. You're naturally going to get more spread out, and you might end up getting closer to what you want and needing to make less tweaks. So that's one thing I would highly recommend. Yeah, very, very opinionated with these minimax exposures. I think this might have something to do with getting some of those, getting to like a lower sim average score portfolio. And I think the aggregate metrics will help you, right? The aggregate metrics, like I wouldn't put any of these in until I put the aggregate metrics in. And like I would put the aggregate metrics and then I would start tweaking. And then I would say like, okay, hey, you're going to see, is your ROI moving up or down? Is your projection score moving up or down? And you're going to see the effect that your changes are having. So I think the aggregate metrics are actually going to help you a lot in determining, are the changes I'm making good or are the changes I'm making bad for my portfolio of long. So big takeaways for me are add in a little more single entry and 3 max, use min uniques before doing minimax exposures, and then use the aggregate metrics to see the impact that those changes are having on your lineup set. So try out those 3 things and circle back with me and let me know how they're treating you. But I would say that other than that, not doing anything wrong here. All right. We are going to get our next person up on the screen here. And let me get them rolling. All right. This is a good note. So I did those exact things for the main slate last night and it was profitable. Thank you for reviewing. Cool. So I just happened to pick one of the two and I just ended up picking the earlier slate. But I think there's, probably a little bit more to learn there than from, a slate where you did really well. So glad to see that those changes are already working out for you. All right. So let's keep it rolling here. And this one is going to be Jim in the Discord here. So let's jump in here and review the lineups that he played from yesterday's slate. So let me get those up on the screen. So again, played the early slate, played the main slate, also played on FanDuel. I say we're actually going to move to the main slate here. So let me get this up on the screen. So played some lineups on the early only on FanDuel, early only on DK, but played a lot more lineups on the FanDuel and DK mains. So because we have contest flashback on DK, we're going to focus on this 5-game DK main slate and we will go from here. But I do want to mention, I do like spreading out the bankroll across the entire day of slates, right? I think this is good. All right, let's jump to the contest tab. And Zoo York said, Andrew, is it too late to get added to the queue? No, it is not. I will add you right now. All right. So We will do New York next. All right, let's take a look at this spread here. So right off the bat, not seeing any single entry or 3-max here, right? You got to mix in some of those smaller field contests, mix in those single entries and 3-maxes, right? Even in some of these contests, right? Like you got to think about this, is that, you could have an edge in these contests and it could still take you a long time to win them, right? So usually like these, larger field contests are going to have like a little bit bigger price at first, right? These are your diversifiers. You're putting a lot of lineups into them, right? And then you have your single entry and 3-max as well, where, a little bit smaller field, only one entry. You get like a huge, ROI return when you win those contests. You want to balance the two, right? Your diversifiers, your elevators. So you got to mix in some single entry and 3-max here is probably the only thing I would say on the contest selection. I think that the type of contest you're picking are fine here, right? Low stakes. You're playing a little bit of the $3. You're only playing, a small number of lineups in them. I think that's okay. But, I think the contest selection is good. Just mix in some more single entry and 3-max. All right. So let's jump into a build. 4 builds here. Not sure which one is going to have our lineups that you ended up using. Okay, so it looks like you ran an individual build for each contest. So I don't think you have to do that. And what I would rather recommend is to run one build for. So the way that we recommend it is you run one build for your single entry and 3-max contests, and another build for your 20-max and 150-max contests. And the reason for that is because the sliders end up being so similar, right? So you come in here, you set this to 20-max, 10 to 50K entries. Sliders are 8, 9. You set it to 150-max, sliders stay the same. The sliders are just controlling the amount of upside we're building into your lineups. So if the sliders are the same, then the upside is the same, right? But when you're playing these smaller single entries, sliders are going to come down, from 8, 9 to 6, 7 here, right? 2 ticks each. This is a little bit more important to capture here. So if you're playing, 20 max, 150 max only, which, I want you to start mixing in those other contests, but for those contests, I would just build them all together. And then what I would do is, you set up all your contest sims. That's great. So what you'll do here is you'll basically build all the lineups together. And then, you'll set my lineups to one contest at a time. So first the $3 15 lineups. Okay, boom. I come in here, I save that. Perfect. And then I trash these lineups with the trash icon, change my lineups to the next one up. Say I put in the 150, go and switch to that contest sim, and then fill those lineups, trash them, move on to the next one, move on to the next one, move on to the next one. So you don't need to do an individual build for each contest. And it'll probably end up saving you some time too. So that's what I'd recommend there. All right. So we see the average projection aggregate metric. That's good. We've been talking about adding the average ROI, adding the minimum ROI. I think those are good ones to have too. As we keep learning the best ways to use these, I think that those will be helpful. Okay, home run rule, don't use batters against opposing pitchers. I think those are both okay rules to have. No worries. Not seeing really any min or max exposure adjustments. I think you're using min uniques to handle most of that for you. I think that's good. Playing at least a 5 stack in all these lineups. Yeah, but you're allowing 4 stacks, so they just didn't make it into your set. I think that's okay. And then let's go into the contest tab. Let's review the 100. Actually, let's review the solo shot. I kind of want to look at the solo shot. Let's look at 20 maxers, sim ROI, and it was Okay, 7% sim ROI here, 7.5. So it is positive. Playing mostly unique lineups. Sim average score, 95.3, using a lot of salary. Let's go and see how that compares. So this is a good one where it's like, okay, hey, you're on the right track. You're positive sim ROI, but how do we take you to the next level? How do we take you from 7.5 to 20 to 25, right? And I'd say a big thing that I'm noticing right out of the gate is that, playing the sim average score for your set was like 95, and a lot of these are 102, 103, 105. So this is a good spot where the aggregate metric shows you kind of how much projection you're sacrificing as you increase the mini uniques, right? So that might be something here. So let's see what 4 does. So we were at 98.7, still at 98.7. 3 gets you to 100.5. I guess 2 keeps you at the same number. Yeah, so 1, 2, and 3 are all like 100.5. I don't know what the exposures and the leverages look like at 3. A little bit more concentrated. Let's see what 5 looks like. So this is kind of interesting, right? At mini uniques of 5, 73% Valdez, 73% Cease. Your highest batter is 40%. At mini uniques of 3, where the average projection is like 2 points higher, 86% Cease, 66% Valdez. So about the same total exposure of the two. And then your highest projected hitter is still 40% at Tovar, right? Tovar was already 40%. Blackman comes up a little bit here, but see, I didn't see the leverage move that much at the highest ranges here. Yet I see the average projection of your lineup set come up 2 points. So this is a spot where it's like, hey, I actually might play mini uniques of 3 because 1, it keeps my projection higher, and then the leverages didn't change very significantly. So keep an eye on like how those adjustments affect your portfolio, how they affect your leverage or exposure, and try and settle on the right number. But generally here, you're going to see, some correlation to, like, in my opinion, from what I've seen, mostly like post contest sims, a little bit higher projection is always ends up being a little bit better, but you could also add the other aggregate metric here showing your average ROI, right? And if we do show your average ROI, it's 151% at mini uniques of 3. And then at mini unique of 5, the average is 150, right? So not bad. So those things hardly change, but your projection goes down a little bit. So I think that, the effect that your projection has a little bit more impact on the post-contest sim maybe than the pre-contest sim. But that's just from doing these and reviewing and noticing trends, right? The pre-contest sim, the post-contest sim aren't 1 for 1. So that would be something that I would be trying to adjust. You could try, if this is something I've seen people do, I'm just throwing out ideas, is aggregate rule, right? Like build a pool with my projection sum at least X. Sometimes it will go a little bit below that number. That's okay. Sometimes there's not enough available lineups to build it at that level. So then it just builds the next highest that it can. That's something you can mess around with. But just some ideas there. You could also filter out projected score lineups, right, from your pool. So do something where it's like show lineups with projected score greater than X, and you kind of just make up a number and see the impact that it has. How many lineups are going in the trash, right? Okay, I trashed 1,500 lineups here. And but do you see the effect that it had, right? So in my 15 lineups, when I add this filter, it drops it to 12. So there were 3 lineups that were projected for less than 92 points. Even though our average projection is high at 99, whatever it is, there are still some lineups up here that are very, very low projected, probably taking some big stand on the slate. And you can increase the average projection of your lineup set with a small change to ROI, about 5% here, by doing this, by adding in some type of projection filter. And then we saw that our set went from 98.7 to 99.9 average projection. So there's a couple different ways to do it. Just want to give you guys some ideas and some thoughts about how to possibly do that. But big takeaways here: adding some single entry and 3 max. Use the aggregate metrics to understand how the changes work. Look at the exposures and leverages as you make these changes, and find a balance there. But not seeing anything egregious. Still positive 7.5% sim ROI. Now let's work on taking you to the next level. Let's look on elevating that sim ROI to a higher number. All right, good stuff there. Let me get Mr. Zoo York here up on the screen and keep it rolling. Just getting everything set up. And Zoo York said, cool, yesterday main slate mini max. So let's jump in here. All right. So let's get him up on the screen. July 31st, MLB DK main slate. So we're all set here. Jumping over to contests. So it looks like he only played this one contest. I gotta say it again. I know I sound like a broken record. Mix in the contest entries, right? Play the quarter jukebox. Play some dime times. Play the $1.20 max. Play some single entries. $1, $3, $1 3 max, $3 3 max, $5 single entry, $12 single entry, right? Mix in these contests, get a balance. Don't just play one contest, 150 max. One thing that you're going to see, right, is that we saw that the highest 150 max sim ROIs in this contest were somewhere around like 6-7%. But then when you go and play the solo shot, the $1.20 max, the sim ROIs achievable were in like the 20% ranges, right? So that $1.20 max is actually a better contest to play than putting all of your bankroll allocation in this contest based on the sim ROIs achievable. So you got to think about those things when deciding which contest to play. So that's another good reason to spread around that action, right? All right, so let's jump in here and see how he did. It's kind of weird. Maybe he has this filtered. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so I was like, why am I only seeing so few columns? But it looks like he had it filtered down. So let's filter by 150 maxers here. Sort by sim ROI. So, again, not the highest edge contest, most high edge contest here. Negative 8% sim ROI. Let's see what we could do about that. Looks like using a lot of salary. Again, sim average score standing out to me here. A lot of these top sets, 104, 105, 103, 106, 102. And Zoo York sitting at like 99. So it looks a little bit low. Let's see what their lineups look like. Playing at least a 4 stack in every lineup. A lot of correlation. Stack exposures look pretty spread out here. This doesn't look bad at all. Pitcher allocation over the field on the two highest owned pitchers here. Took a stand against Logan Webb. Small stand, but a stand nonetheless. And it looks like Logan Webb ended up pitching really good. That's brutal. Batter exposures look good, right? Nobody more than 30% of the 150. We see the ownership to exposure ratios look all pretty well. So nothing like immediately standing out aside from the Saber average score as to why this didn't come out well. And let's see if we could see something in a build. So I'm not 100% sure what the difference is between build 1 and the one that says self sim. Okay. So let's start with filters. Okay, minimax win rate greater than 0. Minimax ROI greater than 0. I don't think you really need to optimize for win rate, and I see that the sorting metric is also win rate here. DFS is such a top-heavy game, like payout structure-wise and all that, that a lot of your ROI is going to come from winning the contests. So, if you are simply sorting by win ROI, you are kind of excluding contests, excluding lineups that have high finishes, but don't always get there. And we talk about the variance from getting first versus third, right? We're talking about like 0.000% difference, like 0.0005 or something like that. We've done the math on the show. Like when you get into the top 1% of a contest, the top 0.1, the top 0.01, the top 0.001, and the difference between first and third is 0.0002 or something like that. It's crazy different. So I don't think you need to, negate good lineups just because they didn't win. I would stick with ROI or even risk adjusted ROI. If you don't want to use risk adjusted, you're like, you know what? I'll assume all of the risk. That's fine. Hey, use ROI. But I think ROI or risk adjusted ROI are better standalone contest sim metrics. The only time I would advocate for win rate is if you are playing a satellite or a winner take all. You're optimizing for satellites, winner take alls. Use win rate, right? If you are optimizing for a mega satellite where it pays, first through 20th get tickets, then you would use cash rate, right? Those are really the only other times I would recommend using some of those other sorting metrics as like a standalone. Otherwise, I would be using them only as like a custom metric with multiple variables as like supporting type variables. So that'd be my recommendation there. Your exposure pretty naturally. No, you capped a bunch of guys. Okay. So this also maybe has something to do with it, right? You came in here and you capped all these players, right? You set these manually. It looks like you set almost all batter exposures manually. I would like to see you come in here and use the mini unique function to more organically adjust these. And, you're going to get to stronger lineups first by using this. You're not going to need to set 40, 50 batter exposures. You might need to set 5 to 10, right? So use mini unique before setting all of these max exposures might help you out as well, because then the builder is going to be able to prioritize certain lineups in certain situations where, maybe you're excluding some higher projected lineups because of these caps and you don't even know it. So let the builder figure that out before putting your own touch on it, as opposed to the opposite. So not as opinionated with the pitchers as the batters. So I think those are my big takeaways, right? One is contest selection, mix it up, play quarter jig box, play $1.20, play single entry and 3 max. And then with whatever's left over, right? Play the 50 cent mini max, right? We've seen the sim ROI numbers comparatively, and like that would the 50 cent mini max would probably be the last one on my list that I'm entering, and I don't want to prioritize. Number two is use risk adjusted ROI or ROI, preferably risk adjusted of the two, but use that over win rate unless playing satellites. Use min uniques before setting max exposures. And if you do that, I think you're well on your way to moving into that positive sim ROI territory. All right. Good stuff there. G-York said in the Discord, I create 5,000 and run a self sim, then I run a contest sim. Is that right? So you should be doing them together. You shouldn't be doing two builds with them. What I would do here, right, is I would have one build, and then I would run my build, right? So say I get my lineups now. So then now I'm in build one. I built my lineups. What I would do here is in my contest sim settings, I would have two sims of the same contest, which it looks like you do, but I would filter for both. Okay, so it looks like you did that. Minimax. Well, I would just do ROI for both. So let's say that this Minimax one, right? Let's say this is your self sim. So what I would do is I would come in here and I would change the ownership source to build. I'm sorry. I would change the field lineups to build one, save that. And then in the other one, I would make sure that it is the regular source, which would be low stakes MME. So you should have one that is the default field lineups. And then you should have one that is the same build you are using, not another build. So maybe that's the key here, right? You don't need two builds. You just need one build. And what you're doing is you're putting all of the lineups in your pool against each other. And then that's getting played out over and over again. So one build, two contest sims, one contest sim against the field lineups, second contest sim against the same build you are in. So then I would make sure that this said build one and save that, right? And then I would run it. And then what I would do after that is go and set two filters that say ROI greater than 0 for both of the contest sims that I now run. So that's going to be a little bit small tweak in the process of how you're doing it. It looks like you ran a default build and then you took the second build and played it against the other one. And that is a little bit out of sync with the process steps there. So make that small change. All right. Good stuff there. Glad we took the time to review. I'm really confident those changes are going to help you. Quick question from Jay. Does the standard plan come with the members only education videos? So we have a ton of educational content on our YouTube channel. The only content that is gated is our Pro Plus exclusive content, where we have conversations or interviews more based around like DFS theory and like challenging DFS concepts. That is only available if you're on the Pro plan and above. But a lot of the educational content, like you referred to, is available to all plans, and you can find that on our YouTube channel. Just search Saber Sim, go to playlist. We have individual sport playlists teaching you how to be a better DFS player at those individual sports. And then the Pro exclusive content is more conversations and theory stuff, just talking like broader DFS concepts. All right. Good question there. Taking a peek here in Discord. Looks like Zurich is typing, so I'll give him a second to get his thought out before we get out of here. But looks like that is our last person for the day. So quick announcement. Tomorrow, the show is going to be at 3 p.m. Eastern, the build review show. And then office hours will still be at 4 p.m. Eastern. So I do have to move it tomorrow. Have a little bit of a conflict. So I just wanted to mention that to you guys here. But I'll follow up with New York in the Discord. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I will see you all tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern for the Build Review Show. So until then, everybody, take care. Good luck. I'll see you all. Thanks. Bye.